Back in 2022, I had 2 job interviews lined up in Georgia. At the time, I was living in a small apartment in downtown Chicago, working a dead-end job that drained the life out of me. These new opportunities, they were a potential way out, corporate positions with real benefits, decent pay, and a chance to start fresh. The plan was simple: drive down to Atlanta on Thursday night, crash at a hotel, and be ready for both interviews Friday morning. Flights were too expensive, so I packed a suitcase, filled a thermos with strong coffee, and hit the road around 6:30 p.m. after my shift ended. I said goodbye to my roommate, grabbed my bag, and braced myself for a long 9-hour overnight drive. According to my GPS, I'd reach my hotel, an economy inn just outside Atlanta, around 3 a.m. For the first few hours, I was riding a caffeine high and blasting music to stay alert. But exhaustion is a tricky thing. No matter how much coffee you drink, it will catch up to you, especially when you're already sleep-deprived and mentally wrecked from stressing over 2 major interviews. Around 12:45 a.m., somewhere in Tennessee just past the Kentucky border, I saw something that shook me. On the shoulder of the highway, under a flickering overhead light, stood a man in a gray suit. He wasn't walking. He wasn't thumbing for a ride. He was just standing there, perfectly still, facing the road. And the moment my headlights hit him, I swear, his head slowly turned and followed my car as I passed. "What the hell?" I said out loud, half laughing, half terrified. "Who the hell just stands out there in a full suit at nearly 1 a.m.? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he got kicked out of a car, or maybe he was a salesman who ran out of gas. Anything to keep me awake. But 10 minutes later, I saw another man up ahead. Same gray suit, same posture, same lifeless stillness. This time, I actually slowed down, my instincts torn between curiosity and concern. As I pulled onto the shoulder, I glanced in the rearview mirror to make sure I wasn't being followed, and then I turned around to look for him. Gone. Completely vanished. There was no ditch to fall into, no trees or hills to hide behind, just flat road and open grass. I floored it back onto the highway. Was I hallucinating? Losing it? I decided to pull off at the next rest stop and grab a third coffee, maybe something sugary to perk me up. As I sat in the near-empty parking lot of a roadside gas station sipping lukewarm coffee, I saw him again, under a streetlight. Gray suit, same face. This time I could see him better. Middle-aged white guy, clean-shaven, short dark hair, neutral expression. But what really freaked me out was that he was staring straight at my car, as if he'd been waiting for me to stop. I turned the ignition and sped out of there without even putting on my seatbelt. I wanted to finish the drive, but my body was giving out. About 90 minutes out from Atlanta, I pulled into a random grocery store parking lot, reclined my seat, and closed my eyes. Sleep didn't come easy. I kept imagining that man in the suit, picturing him walking up to the car window, peering in. What if I opened my eyes and saw him standing outside? Worse, what if he was inside the car? That fear kept me half awake. Eventually, I must have drifted off, but something snapped me awake again. Maybe a sound, maybe just my nerves. I checked every window, driver's side, passenger side, windshield, nothing. Then I glanced at the rearview mirror, and I saw him, in the back seat. For a split second, it was like my soul detached from my body. My brain froze. I screamed, shoved open the door, and fell out onto the pavement. Crawled away, shaking and gasping, trying to catch my breath. When I finally worked up the nerve to look again, the back seat was empty. No one was there. I sat there for a long time, convincing myself it had to be sleep deprivation. My brain was manifesting stress into hallucinations. That had to be it, right? Eventually, heart still racing, I got back in the car, finished the coffee, and powered through the last leg of the drive. I reached the hotel around 3:30 a.m., barely managed to check in, and collapsed face first into bed. My first interview was at 11 a.m. I wasn't well rested, but I managed to shower and put on my best outfit. I tried to shake off the weirdness of the night before. But when the interviewer came out to greet me, I froze. It was him. Same gray suit, same short dark hair, same face. He extended his hand, and I hesitated just a second too long. I know he noticed. My brain short-circuited. I felt like I was in a dream or a nightmare. The entire interview, I couldn't focus. I was anxious, confused, totally out of it. I tanked that one. But the second interview, that one went better. It was with a woman named Claire, and I nailed it. She hired me. I still work for that company now, living in the Atlanta area full-time. I told my therapist about the whole thing. She believes the stress combined with the lack of sleep and mental pressure triggered an extended visual hallucination. Her theory is that I pictured a generic corporate interviewer in my head, someone in a gray suit, and that figure haunted me during my drive. Maybe she's right, but it doesn't change the fact that I saw the same man 3 times in 3 different places, and I felt his presence in my car. That drive changed me. Now, I'll never do another overnight road trip alone, especially not to chase a job. Back in the summer of 2021, I was driving through McDowell County, West Virginia late at night. I'd taken a back road detour to avoid traffic on the interstate heading home from a long weekend. It was just past midnight, dark, silent, and empty. The kind of road where you don't see another car for miles. Honestly, I loved it. Just me, the road, and my favorite paranormal podcast humming through the speakers. Suddenly, my dashboard chimed. I was running low on gas. I pulled up Google Maps and searched for the nearest fuel station. There was one listed, just 10 minutes ahead, tucked away along the edge of a rural 2-lane road surrounded by thick woods. I figured it'd be one of those old-school mom-and-pop stations. When I pulled in, I was right. It was a rundown, no-name gas station with flickering lights and one other vehicle, an old, rust-colored pickup truck with mismatched panels and a busted headlight. A guy in his late 40s or early 50s was filling up his tank. He looked over at me, didn't smile, just stared. I nodded politely and walked into the shop. Inside, I grabbed a coffee and paid in cash for my gas. Nothing felt off yet, just another lonely pit stop. But when I came back outside, I saw the man getting into his truck and slowly pulling away. I thought nothing of it, until I got back on the road. Barely a minute later, there it was, his truck, just sitting on the side of the road with the engine off. No lights, no movement. I passed by, checking the rearview mirror to see if he'd pull back onto the road, but he didn't. Weird, but maybe he forgot something at the station. I turned my podcast back on and tried to shake it off. A few minutes later, another ding echoed from my dashboard. This time, my tire pressure alert was flashing. I rolled down my window and heard it, that telltale wobble. I pulled over, stepped out, and sure enough, my rear driver's side tire was completely flat. And here's the thing. I never hit anything. The roads were clean and clear. That's when it hit me. Did he slash my tire back at the gas station? As that thought crept in, I pulled out my phone and opened Google to find my roadside assistance info. That's when I heard it, the low growl of an engine behind me. No lights, just the sound of a truck idling somewhere in the dark. It was pitch black, and I couldn't see where the sound was coming from. I grabbed the emergency flashlight from my trunk, one of those big yellow rods my dad gave me for emergencies, and shined it down the road. 200 feet away, just barely visible in the light, sat a familiar rust-red pickup truck. His truck. My heart jumped into my throat. I ran into the woods, and ducked behind a large bush. I pulled out my phone and called 911, whispering everything to the dispatcher. My location, the slashed tire, the man from the gas station, and the truck following me. She asked if I could describe him. I started to, but then the truck engine started again. This time, the headlights came on. I stayed frozen as the truck rolled up next to my stranded car. Then a voice called out, "Hey, you need some help?" I didn't answer. I held my breath. The dispatcher was still on the line, walking me through what to do. Then click, the call dropped. Terrible reception. I waited, hoping she'd try to call back. But no bars, no messages. Then I heard another vehicle. Another engine approached. This time, I saw headlights coming from the opposite direction. Another pickup truck slowed down next to my disabled car, and the man from earlier walked right up to the driver's window. I crept closer through the brush, listening. He was calmly explaining some nonsense about finding a stranded car, pretending he was just helping out. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran out of the woods screaming, "Help! I don't know this guy! He slashed my tire and followed me." Both men turned to look at me. The driver of the second truck stared at the guy in the rust-colored truck with visible suspicion. Meanwhile, the creepy guy backed away, shaking his head and denying everything. He claimed he'd never seen me before. Then, without another word, He climbed into his truck, threw it in reverse, and sped off into the darkness. The other driver got out, checked my flat, and offered to drive me into town. I told him the police were on the way, and within a few minutes, flashing lights appeared in the distance. A sheriff's deputy arrived and took my statement. The other driver backed up my story. The officer told me he'd head to the gas station to request surveillance footage and see if there was any proof of the tire being slashed. He stayed with me until roadside assistance showed up and towed my car to a nearby shop. My dad met me there and drove me the rest of the way home. I never heard back from the officer. Maybe the footage was too blurry or didn't show anything. Maybe the guy was smart enough to avoid the cameras. But I think about that night a lot, how close I probably came to being abducted, or worse. I haven't taken a rural backroad detour since. This story was told to me by a listener. Here is her story word for word. I'm 28 now, and I still can't shake the feeling that if things had gone just a little differently, I might not be here to tell you this. My name's Rachel, and my boyfriend Liam lives in Eugene, Oregon. We're long distance, so we take turns visiting, but since he owns his place and I live with my cousin in a shared apartment, I usually go to him. It was winter break, and I had the whole week off from my job as a middle school teacher. So I packed up my old 2010 Nissan Altima, a car that hates winter roads, and started the long drive north through rural Oregon. By the time I hit southern Oregon, the snow was really coming down. Hard. There had been blizzard warnings earlier in the day, but Liam and I agreed it was better to try and beat the storm rather than drive into it the next morning. Bad decision. By 9 p.m., I could barely see the road. I finally admitted to myself I wasn't going to make it to Eugene that night. I needed to pull over somewhere, anywhere, to wait out the storm. I stopped at this tiny roadside diner in a town called Timber Run. Just a few booths, some stale coffee, and a flickering neon sign. The waitress was kind, and after some small talk, she told me flat out, "You shouldn't be on the roads right now." She recommended a few nearby cheap motels, and I started looking them up on my phone. That's when a man sitting alone at the bar swiveled around. He had this scruffy flannel, a beer in hand, and a too eager smile. "There's a motel just 5 minutes up the road," he said. "Real cheap, real quiet." He introduced himself as Travis. I told him my name was Megan. It wasn't, but something about him made me want to lie. He sat there half-turned toward me the rest of the time I was eating. I didn't want to keep the conversation going, so I just stared out the diner window into the falling snow until the waitress brought my check. I left quickly, and the snow had already piled up another inch or more. I followed the GPS to the motel Travis mentioned, the Pine Hollow Lodge, a dusty-looking roadside place with only a few cars in the icy parking lot. Perfect for a night's rest, I figured. The man at the front desk barely spoke, didn't smile, and handed me a key to room 104. The whole transaction took under a minute. Room 104 was on the ground floor. I parked right outside, grabbed my overnight bag, and stepped into one of the creepiest motel rooms I'd ever seen. Peeling wallpaper, stained red carpet, and the faint smell of mildew. I tried to FaceTime Liam, but I had no cell signal. I went back to the front office to ask for the Wi-Fi password. On the way there, I noticed a new car had pulled into the lot, a dull silver sedan. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, but I didn't stop to look. At the front desk, the man silently pointed at a paper taped to the wall with the Wi-Fi info. I typed it into my phone and waited for it to connect. It was barely working, but I made it back to my room and tried FaceTiming Liam again. Choppy, freezing, unusable. We gave up and switched to texting. That's when I heard it. A sound from the bathroom. It was a quiet click, like the sound of a door shutting. I stared at the closed bathroom door. I didn't remember closing it. I texted Liam, "I think someone's in my bathroom." "Did you lock the front door when you went to the office?" he replied, and my stomach dropped. I hadn't. I panicked. I grabbed my key, put on my shoes, and opened the front door to check if it locked automatically. It didn't. It was a standard turnstile knob, completely manual. And then I saw them. Footprints. Fresh. A second set of footprints leading from the new car in the lot to my motel door. The car was empty now. My heart was racing. I shut the door and ran to the front desk in full-blown panic. telling the man that someone had broken into my room. He didn't move. He didn't even seem surprised. Instead, he told me in a flat voice to stay inside the office. Then he made a phone call. Not to the police. He spoke in a language I didn't recognize. Sounded like he was calling a friend. Suddenly he said, "Stay here. Don't go back to your room." From where I was standing, I could see the line of rooms through the office window. That's when I saw my door open. Travis, the man from the diner. He stepped out of my room, saw me through the window, and froze. We locked eyes. Then he turned, calmly walked back to his silver sedan, and drove away down the snowy road. I couldn't breathe. About 20 minutes later, the man the front desk guy called showed up. A huge guy, didn't speak English. The two talked for a while before they handed me a new key, a different room. They helped me move my stuff, but I barely slept that night. The next morning, I left as soon as the roads were cleared enough to drive. I made it to Liam's house. I never told my family the full story. I didn't want them to panic. But I did call the diner later that week to report Travis. I don't know if they took me seriously. What really haunts me is how casually the motel worker handled it, like it wasn't the first time, and the fact that someone got into my room while I was gone for 2 minutes. Now I triple lock every door. I never stay in off-the-grid motels, and I'll never ever assume someone's just being friendly again. Love a good mystery? Subscribe to Fourth Dimension for weekly stories on creepy and mysterious disappearances, cryptid encounters, and the unexplained.